What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel The Beast On. I am The Beast, Brian London. If you see this face with the reflection of my ring light and my glasses, isn't that cool? I got purple around my eyes. Hey! God, I feel like a senior citizen. Or if you hear the sound of my voice, please subscribe down there. Hit the little bell down there so you get notified when there's new videos. And the most important thing I have found out is to hit the little thumbs up button down that way. And that just tells Google, which owns YouTube, hey, there's a couple people that like this video. Let's show it to other people. All right. I didn't even bother with the green screen. I didn't bother with any production value on this because it's just, I've been wanting to make this video for a few days now since the Super Bowl. And just right now, I just was like, bam, let me do it. So I just put the camera on and let's go. And I'm wearing my green comfy as always, as I'm still working on the comfy people to be a sponsor of the channel. And it's weird because their social media people love me. We go back and forth all the time, but they tell me to email these other people and they won't get back to me. So there's some disconnect there. Listen, hit up the comfy at the original comfy and let them know, listen, hook up Beast. Give him a couple shekels. He needs to keep the lights on. Thank you for watching. All right. So this video is kind of, but directed at my former coworker, my friend, not my former friend, my friend, someone I admire a lot. And he can tell you about how much I embarrassed him one time in a sales meeting, gushing over how good I think he is at the radio. And that is Brendan Tobin. Works for 7 Night of the Ticket down here in South Florida, my old stomping grounds, because we get into fights. They're not real fights. They're Tobin Peacock Pirate fights about my love for the Heat. And, showed a little too much chest hair there, Beast. My love for the Heat, how I've disassociated myself from my original fandom from the Celtics, and then the whole argument got escalated when I made it be known I was rooting for the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl because of one Tom Brady, my favorite professional athlete of all time. And so I started just thinking about fandom and allegiances and how it's a topic for conversation when it shouldn't be, right? The whole bandwagon fan thing and all of that stuff. Now, there is one aspect of fandom that I still kind of find poo-poo, if you will, which is the total bandwagon fan. The guy or girl that simply likes a team because of no emotional connection whatsoever other than they're cool or they're winning, right? And like for me, I would have been guilty of that back in the day in high school where I thought I was cool running around with like UNLV gear because they were dominating college basketball at the time. And I didn't know, I had no emotional connection to Tark or anyone on those teams. I just simply thought the Running Rebels were cool. That wearing their gear made me cool. That was like a thing I had. Obviously, I always loved the Canes. And that didn't interrupt that. But so that would have been my one example of me way back as a child jumping on a bandwagon. So you feel free to punish me for that. Spank me if you want. That got weird. So like, when you go to Heat Warriors games, right? And or any game the Heat play against, like the Warriors or the Lakers, and you see a bunch of people wearing the Steph jerseys or the LeBron jerseys or what have you, and you're just sitting there watching, and you just know that this 8-year-old or 10-year-old or 13-year-old has literally nothing emotional in way of attachment to that team. They just think it's cool. They want the Steph jersey. They want the LeBron Lakers jersey, and that's that. right? But there's no real emotional connection. I hate that. It bothers me. You people can go to hell if such a thing exists. I'm a Jew. We really don't believe in hell, but whatever. It's all good. Otherwise, like, whoever you decide to root for is fine with me. Like, so my fandom. Here's my fandom, right? And there's a reason for everything. So let's start with my biggest love in the world, the University of Miami. Well, why do I root for the University of Miami? I grew up in Boston. How did that happen? Was it because they reeled off a bunch of championships? No, it actually has nothing to do with that. My love for the University of Miami started because my mom was born at Doctors Hospital in Coral Gables, lived in Coral Gables on Almanar Avenue, which is between Lejeune and the UM campus. And my uncle went there, and my grandmother, Sylvia, was a diehard Hurricanes fan. And my mom used to go party on campus. My mom's a child of the 60s, so she did a lot of partying, which is cool. And basically, I was programmed from the time I was born that I was going to go to the University of Miami, not because of football, but because it was the place near where my grandmother lived, and I was going to go to school at UM, and she was going to do my laundry, and that's all I knew. Every waking moment that we had any kind of school vacation or long weekend, we would come down and stay with my grandparents in Coral Gables. And my grandmother would take me driving around or walking around the UM campus, even, when I was in a stroller. So that was pre-Schellenberger in the late 70s. It's just all I ever knew. That was the college I was going to go to. It had nothing to do with football. Now, I lucked out that the college I was going to go to turned out to have a pretty good football team and baseball team and once in a while a basketball team and all that stuff. But I was going to go to the University of Miami if there was no athletics on campus, because that's what it was supposed to be. Now, not to get too weepy, but my grandmother passed away from leukemia my junior year of high school, and my dreams of living at her house and going to UM and having her do my laundry, all that stuff that we had planned since I was a kid, never came to fruition. But I still went to the U, which is why I always loved the U. It's ingrained in my heart, and it'll always be that way. So that's where my love of the U came from. And yes, during Hail Flutie, I was in the kitchen rooting for the University of Miami. My dad was in the family room rooting for Boston College. We couldn't sit next to each other. And when Flutie completed that pass, I was in tears and he was jumping for joy. I will never forget that. So that's my love of the U. And then my other loves when it comes to professional sports were, all because I grew up in Boston. And my first love actually is the Bruins, because our next door neighbor, when I was a kid growing up, from like the age of 2 to maybe 12, 13, something like that, was Brad Park. Great defenseman in the National Hockey League, played for the Bruins, lived next door to me, used to give us tickets, used to let me sit behind the bench, would as he's walking off the ice for the intermission, would hand me a couple of pucks. So we love the Bruins. That was the first love. Then obviously when you're growing up in Boston, you love the Red Sox. That's ingrained from from the days of that you can breathe. You love the Red Sox. Obviously the Celtics were a behemoth, so you love the Celtics. And I have growing up, I love the Celtics because actually a lot of athletes chose to live in the town that I'm from in Massachusetts, called Linfield. Linfield is about 20 minutes north of Boston, and it just so happens, and the reason why my parents chose to live there was because it Linfield is right at like the convergence of two major highways. So not to get too in the weeds, but like 95, like just like here in Florida. So 95, that highway, which as it's going by Linfield is called 128, but it's still 95. It's like two highways in one. So 95 goes by Linfield, and then what you would call US 1 down here, we call Route 1 up in Boston, and it's the same. It's actually literally the same road. You can travel on US 1 / Route 1 all the way from the Keys to Maine, to Canada. So, but in the section of Route 1, US 1, that goes by the town that I grew up in, it's actually a highway. It's not like when you think of US 1 here and you think of Federal or South Dixie Highway and there's lights and it's not really a highway, it's just like a main road. That's not what it is up where I lived for my childhood. It's literally a highway, like people going like 70, 80, highway, with like an occasional light every, I don't know, 10, 15 miles, maybe, not even. So two major highways to get to places in Massachusetts is why people chose to live in Linfield. And because of that, a ton of athletes grew up or lived in Linfield. Dwight Evans, I went to school with his kids. Chris Ford, who hit the first three-pointer in NBA history and played and coached for the Celtics. I played soccer and went to school with his kids. Mike Milbury, who played with the Bruins, he coached my Little League team, was on the Little League team with his kid, Owen Milbury. I mean, there was just a lot of athletes lived in that area because of its access to get to their training facilities and all of that stuff. So, needless to say, I grew up with those. And then obviously the Patriots. Now, remember, when I'm, less than 10, when I'm growing up and getting into sports, when I'm 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the Patriots were god-awful. Like, the worst. Like, we would go to one or two games a year. My dad would take me down to Foxborough, which is not, it's like going to Sunrise if you live in Miami. So Foxborough is like it's not like going to downtown Boston to go to Fenway or the Garden, where it's like 20 minutes from anywhere. This is like going to Sunrise if you live in Kendall. So like, it's closer to, Foxborough is closer to Providence than it is to Boston. So we would schlep down to Foxborough, go to a couple games a year, and there was no one there. The Patriots were lovable losers. I mean, I love me some Mosey Tutupu, some John Hanna, some Steve Nelson, the Grogans, the Easons, the Tom Ramseys. The Stanley Morgans of the world, the Andre Tippett's, the Ronnie Lepettes. Ronnie Lepette went to the U, by the way. All those guys I grew up loving. And they sucked big time, but I still love the Patriots. The games were always blacked out. My dad and I would sit around a radio on Sundays listening to the games on the radio, with Gil Santos on the call and Gino Capoletti doing color. And so I love the Patriots, obviously. And so those are all the teams that I loved. And then I came to the University of Miami in 1994. And when I came to the University of Miami, there was a time, second semester, freshman year, where I had my card taken away from me because my first semester I basically did nothing by way of studying because I was at the University of Miami. And it's like, I was at the Grove. We didn't go to South Beach early on at my time at the U. South Beach wasn't a thing yet. It was still like old people and not a thing. Eventually, by the time I graduated from the U, we were going to South Beach, but most of our time was spent in the Grove. Like every night was spent in the Grove, like just constantly Grove. So because I didn't do well grades wise, my parents took my car away in December of 1994. So January of 1995, I get back to campus, no car. What do? Well, now I have to use public transportation for all my entertainment needs. And that's where I found the heat, in January of 1995, and the Panthers, although I didn't really cling to the Panthers as much because I still loved my Bruins. But I started going to Heat games because we had a Ticketmaster on campus. We didn't have it online. We couldn't just go online and get tickets. We went to a Ticketmaster window on campus and got dirt cheap Heat tickets, took the Metro Rail down to the Miami Arena, and went to Heat games. And I did this often enough that I was like, oh, okay, like I kind of like the Heat now. And then they get Pat Riley, right? And they start building a team. And so, like, it started out where, like, I was like Celtics here, Heat here. Heat was just like a hobby, like a thing. And then slowly as the years went on, I was going to more Heat games, and they got better. And the Celtics were just I can't root for two different basketball teams. So slowly but surely, like, it went like this, right? Where the Heat took over. Like, I would pay attention to what the Celtics were doing, but I was more passionate about what the Heat were doing because I was actually going to games and watching them on TV. They were on locally. The Celtics weren't on in my dorm room. So I became a Heat fan, but still like the Celtics. And then after I graduated college and started working in media, started covering, going to Heat games, maybe with a credential a couple times, and having to pay attention to what the Heat were doing. And I just became more and more of a Heat fan. And it just slowly happened. It wasn't anything that was forced. It just became that. For some reason, though, that never happened to me. I grew up, remember, the Heat aren't in existence until 1988. So when I was 12. The Panthers weren't in existence until, 93? The Marlins weren't in existence until 93. So I didn't grow up hating the Panthers or the Heat or the Marlins. The one team in South Florida I grew up absolutely loathing more than anything in the world were the Dolphins. I loathe the Dolphins. Squish the fish, the whole thing. I loathe the Dolphins. So for that reason, I never became a Dolphins fan. I can't. Like, I still to this day really don't like the Dolphins. Although, as an organization, I admire them because I've worked with the Dolphins as an organization over the years. I love a lot of people that work for the Dolphins. I admire what they're doing, but I can't bring myself to actually root for the Dolphins as a fan. As an aside, I think they're on the right path with Flo and Greer and what they're doing. Like, I can analyze that without being biased, but you will not get me to wear Dolphins gear and go root for the Dolphins. You can go bleep yourself with that. So I was never going to like the Dolphins, so I'm always going to be a Patriots fan no matter what. And was a Patriots fan when they sucked, and was a Patriots fan when they were awesome, and then they sucked again, and then they were awesome again. So it was like going to it sucked, losing to the Bears in the Super Bowl, then sucking again in the early 90s, and then going to the Super Bowl against the Packers, and then being mediocre with Drew Bledsoe, and then the rise with Bill Belichick, like, fan through all of that, through and through. So again, back to so I stuck with my Bruins because I didn't really hate the Panthers. I'd go to Panthers games and cheer for them, gladly put on some Panthers gear. I don't really think it's a conflict. I don't really care. Like, I pay attention to the Panthers tangentially. Like, I'm not a diehard, but I'll gladly go to a Panthers game and root for the Panthers as long as they're not playing the Bruins. Root for the Bruins ahead of the Panthers. The Marlins, the same thing. One, they're in the NL, Red Sox in the AL. I'll go to a Marlins game. I'll root for the Marlins. I have a bunch of Marlins gear. I like the Marlins, except when they're playing the Red Sox, and I don't, like, that's my deal. But as far as the Heat and the Celtics go, so now it's a decision where they're in the same conference, right? They're in the same division, or they were back, whatever, same conference, and we're sort of rivals. And so it just became that, like, it would be like he was just coming over the Celtics. Now the Celtics went back to the championship and won a finals. It was like, okay, the Celtics are in the finals. Like, they're the team I grew up rooting for. They're playing the Lakers, who I absolutely hate because I grew up as a Celtics fan, hating the Lakers. Like, who am I going to root for in these finals? Yeah, I'm going to root for the Celtics to beat the Lakers because there's like a tiny piece of me that still clings to that childhood of loving the Celtics, but more importantly, hates the Lakers. So yes, I rooted for the Celtics against the Lakers in those finals. It brought me a Scary Terry jersey, a t-shirt. I think before that, it's infamously known that I have a Kevin Garnett jersey. I think I got that as a gift from my parents. Whatever. You want to, if having one jersey makes me a Celtics fan, then, I mean, I'd like to see a lot of your closets, please. And then after that championship, it just over time, I became more of a Heat fan to a Celtics fan. Do I hate the Celtics? No. Do I love the Celtics? Not like I used to. I legitimately love the Heat. I legitimately love the Heat. Because at this point in time, think about this. I was born in 76, and left to come down here in 94. All right, that's 18 years. But I've been down in Miami since 94. It is now 2021. Last time I checked, that's 27 years or 26 years, whatever it is. I've been a Heat fan longer than I was a Celtics fan. And that's the way it is. That's like, I'm fully a Heat fan. I hate to disappoint everyone or what have you. Like, yeah, if for some reason the Celtics are in the finals again and they're playing a team I don't like, I'll root for the Celtics, right? You got to have a rooting interest in it. It's hard not to watch a game and not have a rooting interest, unless you're gambling or it's fantasy, right? But trust me, when the Heat play the Celtics, I root for the Heat, which pisses my dad off, but that's what happens. So let's deliver this baby, as my former boss Glenn used to say. Like whoever you want as a fan, if you have some emotional attachment. Mike Ryan loves the Cleveland Browns because his abuela bought him a plate that had the Cleveland Browns on it, and that's his emotional attachment, right? Our old colleague Josh Friedman was a Dallas Cowboys fan, is a Dallas Cowboys fan. He's still with us, Josh. He must have a reason for that he's not a Bears fan and he's a Cowboys fan. I'm sure there's some reason, emotional reason. If you have an emotional reason, an attachment to be a fan of a team, go do that. Even if it's not the team from your hometown, even if it's not, the team that are supposed to like. I mean, listen, a lot of you that have this argument that I'm not allowed to like the Heat and I'm supposed to like the Celtics. Are you Canes fans? And did you go to school there? Because that could be a bone of contention. But I don't have a problem with that. Like, be a Miami Hurricanes fan, even if you didn't go to school there. Now, I went to school there. It's my alma mater. And as I explained to you, I didn't go there because I had a good football team. I went there because I loved the school. So as long as you have some sort of emotional connection to a team, there's no reason why you should be a fan of that team. I have an emotional connection to the Heat now. I love the Heat. I don't love the Celtics anymore. Again, if I'm forced to pick, you put me on a lie detector test, I will pick the Heat over the Celtics. There's no doubt about it. Now, again, like I said, Celtics in the championship, they're playing some team I don't like, rooting for the Celtics. Why? Because 10-year-old me would root for the Celtics. 20-year-old me would not root for the Celtics. Maybe that would. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. Back then, it was probably even. So that's my deal. All right. I know this video really went nowhere. It was really just a cathartic experience, kind of like a therapy session. Sorry I put you through it. But still, subscribe. Peace.